Hi guys, I just want to make a short series of videos which basically explain different combat roles that the ships can perform, and then go through each ship individually using just that ship to show it performing that role, and then do one at the end which will show all 5 of the different roles in the same video, showing you how you would try and organise a task fleet if you were able to create task fleets. At the moment in campaign mode, you're limited as to what the computer decides that it's going to make you play with, but you do on occasion have grand battles where you are going to use all of the ships that you have available. So first off, we have the Battleship. So in campaign mode, the best way to use a battleship is not really as a combat ship, but more as a power projection ship. So you build it out to be as cheap as possible, with as high tonnage as possible, giving it maximum range. That way it will give the most power projection that it can, which will basically be really important for campaigns. Not so much in the current state, but in the future when the campaigns become grand campaigns from start to finish. So because they are mainly for power projection and not for combat, you're going to be lowering the speed down to 16, so you're going to be keeping this ship down as far away from the combat as possible. But obviously you still want it to do something in the battle. So you will use this ship with long range guns, really high accuracy, but you won't be getting close in, so you won't need any secondary guns. And you won't need any torpedoes or anything, so you can save some weight on that. Because you're using 16 knot speed, you're not going to need a very powerful funnel, and you're not going to need any of these propulsion components which improve your smoke interference. You might need 1 or 2, but you're not going to need many because you've got the smallest funnel. So because you're making it as cheap as possible, you're not going to be buying any components because they're all really expensive. But because you are going to be using it as a gun platform, a long range gun platform, you are going to be spending quite a bit of cash on the armament and the range finder, and also the radar if you have it unlocked. Okay, so a bit of a weird one, but with these long range ships, you don't build the armour out the same as you would any other type of ship. So in long range engagements, you don't need any fore or aft belt and deck armour. All you need is main belt, main deck, conning tower, and your turret armour. So just put all 4 of these stats as high as you can get them, as even as you can get them as well. So have them all even and as high as you can get them, and then put your conning tower up to approximately 1.5 times as much as the other 4 parts of your ship. Okay, so that's how you build out a power projection ship. The next one is your battle cruiser. Now this one is going to be performing a mix of the battleship, which is long range, and the armoured cruiser, which is short range. So for the start of the battle it'll be long range, and then if you haven't finished the enemy off with your smaller ships, then you will use this as a short range ship, just to keep the enemy away from your battleship. It's unlikely that it'll come to this. You've usually won the battle at this point, but you'll have that in mind just in case. So because you are unlikely to get close to the enemy with the battlecruiser, you're still not really going to be spending any cash on propulsion, on maneuverability propulsion. You're just going to be doing very similar to the battleship, going for long range guns, as accurate as you can make them, and then maybe a couple of short range guns, but these are highly unlikely that you're going to be using these. So again, because you're not intending to get close to the enemy with this ship, you don't need torpedoes. If you were in a time period where you could take electric and oxygen, then you can take these and just fire them off at really long range and just hope you get some lucky shots. But anything less than electric, you may as well just save the weight and not bother taking them, because you're going to be staying at a big distance with this ship. So because you might be closing in on the enemy at some point with this ship, you're going to want as much critical resistance as possible. So the Citadel is ammo detonation and flash fire critical resistance. Reinforced bulkhead is flash fire, and the barbettes is ammo detonation and flash fire again. So them three you want. And then obviously the croup armour, or the highest armour that you can take, is going to lower your weight, which will let you add more guns, more armour to the ship. So you're going to want that as well. Because it's a long range gun platform, you're going to want to spend as much cash as you can on your armament and your rangefinder. And because there's a chance you're going to get close to the enemy, you're going to want the best sonar as well. So now, the armour with this ship is going to be different to your battleship, because there is a chance that you're going to get close to the enemy with this ship. So rather than just going all out on your main belt, main deck turrets, you're going to be putting some on your fore and aft belt and some on your superstructure. If you had more tonnage to spare, you could put some in the deck as well, but it's not entirely necessary. You're not going to get shot in the deck very often, and if you were going to try and protect these, you'd have to turn them up quite high, which is obviously then going to cost quite a lot of tonnage. Okay, onto the armoured cruisers. Now these are your screening ships, so their primary role is to shoot down the enemy torpedo threats. That's the only real thing that these are intended to do. So with that in mind, you're going to want them as manoeuvrable as possible, because they're going to be dodging torpedoes. So you're going to want to spend as much cash as you can, get all the best manoeuvrability components. You're going to want it fast, because you're going to be chasing fast ships. And obviously, you're going to want smoke interference is actually really low on this ship. On some of the armoured cruisers, smoke interference might be a problem, so you would also put some into these propulsion to get the smoke interference down. You're going to select the best engine to save on weight, and the best armour. Again, same with the battlecruiser. Go for these three which have the critical resistance. I never bother with torpedo defense, because I always think that it's better to try and avoid the torpedoes entirely and save the weight. It only encourages bad habits if you start putting torpedo defense on your ship. Again, you're going to want the best armament. You're pretty much always going to want the best armament on every ship, apart from a torpedo boat, where you're only going to want torpedo stuff on a torpedo boat. Okay, sonar is incredibly important for this ship, as it's likely going to be very close to the enemy torpedo threats. And best rangefinder again, because your primary role with this ship is gunning down like smaller ships. Similar to the battle cruiser, you're going to want a nice even amount on these forebelt, aft belt, and main deck, with a pretty decent main belt and turret armour. And then you're going to want a relatively high amount on your fore and aft deck, because they are going to be getting shot by secondary guns, and so you're going to want it around about 1.6, 1.7 to protect against secondary guns. Preferably you'd want your superstructure up to 1.6, 1.7 as well, but this one's really expensive, so it's unlikely you're going to have the tonnage available to put into this, but if you did, you'd put this up to the same as your fore and aft deck. Okay, so we've got the light cruiser now. The primary role for the light cruiser is to get in close and do torpedo runs. So because they have a lot higher armour than destroyers, they're able to get in closer without risking getting blown up on the way in. Which means that they're able to get a lot closer to battleships and deliver a killing blow. So that's their primary role, is short-range torpedo attacks. You can give them some turrets as well, just to help deal with the enemy torpedo boats, but they don't really need much in the way of guns, because they are primarily going to be a torpedo threat. So again, fast speed, really high maneuverability, critical resistance, and torpedo. I've also given it some gun upgrades as well, just because I had the extra weight, but the gun upgrades aren't really necessary if you haven't got the weight. Max out pretty much all of these four, and then with the armour, with the fore and aft deck, you're not going to be in amongst the fighting for a very long time, so you're not going to get shot that often. So these two, or these three I should say, aren't particularly important. It's more about these four and your turret armour, and obviously your conning tower. Okay, the destroyer. Now, after about 1920, or maybe a bit earlier, 1915, your light cruiser is going to be taking on the role of torpedo boats. So destroyers aren't going to be your main torpedo threat anymore. You can still use these, but they are quite expensive now. They're not very survivable, and you're going to lose a lot of them, basically. So with that in mind, instead of using them as a close-range torpedo threat, they now switch their role to a long-range blanket fire torpedo threat. So you use them en masse, 4 or 5 destroyers, and just fire a load of shots off from long range and just hope that something lands. So they're not going to be in the fight for very long. I like to use these as like an initial engagement. Go in, fire off everything, flee, and they play no more role in the battle, just to try and get some early damage on without really risking anything. Okay, so they're the 5 key roles for your ships: power projection, long range, which can then at the end of the game finish off battleships if there's any crippled battleships left. Screening ships, short range torpedo ships, and long-range torpedo ships. Okay, so that's part 1 for the ship roles. I will, in the next video, go into using each one of these individually, and then I'll do one where I use all of them together. Okay, see you in the next video. Take care, guys.